Have you guys ever thought about that question that every one of us, we want to be known for something? I mean, that's just a human thing. That's a universal thing, regardless of your belief system, your background. Every single one of us, we want to be known for something. So my question that I want to start with, and I genuinely want you to think about, is what do you want to be known for? As you're here today and you're sitting in this room, or if you're out in the foyer sitting in one of our benches, or I know there's some rolling chairs out there that you're sitting in, which I really appreciate you doing that. If you're watching online, wherever you're at, like, have you ever thought about this? Like, honestly, what do you want to be known for? In your relationships, maybe at work, or maybe at school, or on that team, what is it you want to be known for? As a husband, what is it you want to be known for? As a wife, what do you want to be known for? As a mom or a dad, or maybe, at your gym, if you walk in your gym, depending on whatever you're wearing, like, what do you want people to know you for? Or even in your neighborhood, people drive by your house and they think about, the people who live there. What do you want them to think about you? What do you want to be known for? I think that's a universal question and a universal desire. As I think about my personal life, this week I thought about, what is it I want to be known for? And I thought, as a dad, I want to be known as a great dad. A dad who, consistently just discovers the hearts of his sons. I would love to be known for that. As a leader, I want to be known for as someone who's constantly curious and very self-aware. As a husband, I just want to be known for as a man who is faithful and just discovers the life and the adventure with my beautiful wife, Jill. I'd love to be known for that. As a follower of Jesus, I'd love to be known for someone who just fixes his eyes on Jesus. That, people say of me, they like, Buck, he just was kind of stubborn with that. He just continually took his cues and, direction from Jesus. He just kept his eyes fixed on Jesus. And then something personally for me, I'd love to be known for this, is that consistently, regardless of how old I get or how young I am, the one thing that I want to be known for over and over is for having tall hair. I love tall hair. I do. When I look at my hair in the mirror, I look at it and I like it. Now, I don't like my ear hair, my nose hair, my eyebrows. That's ridiculous the older I get. But I look at my hair. Ever since middle school, I've just kind of liked this style. I like that. In fact, totally a side note is that Jill and I, several years ago, we were in Fredericksburg, and we were window shopping, and there was a sign in the window, and Jill bought it, and it's in my office today, and if you want, you can go look at it, but it's next to my Oreo candle, and it says, "The higher the hair, the closer to God," which I think that's good doctrine, good theology right there, right? We should just hold to that. But the point is this, guys, every single one of us, regardless of your background, regardless of your belief systems, all of us, we want to be known for something. So again, back to you. What is it that you want to be known for? And then the second question I want you to think about is what do you do when there's a gap? And you're like, what do you mean there's a gap? Here's what I mean. What do you do, or what do we do with the gaps between what we want to be known for and who we actually are? In other words, when there's a gap between, I want to be known for this in my dating relationship or at school, or I want to be known for this at work, or I want to be known for this in my marriage. But the reality is something different. And do you know what we do? Again, this is a universal thing. This is a human thing. That the temptation for every single one of us is to manage our image. And how do we do that? Well, one of the things we do is we pretend. When there's a gap, maybe in our marriage, and somebody comes up and says, "Hey, how are things going?" Our temptation is to pretend. We say things like, "Oh, it's great. My wife is amazing. She's so beautiful. She's so adventurous. Look at her. Woo!" And your wife over there the whole time's going, "Who are you? Who are you talking about? You are pretending. This is not our marriage. This is not what you have communicated, at least to me. I mean, it'd be nice, right?" And we have that tendency to pretend. You know what else we do? In the gap between who and what we want to be known for and maybe what the reality is, we have a tendency to blame. It's like, hey, maybe at work we want to be known for this thing, and, or maybe at school or on the team, and we're not there yet. The reality is we're not where we'd hope to be. And so somebody asks us, and we're like, it's my coach. My coach just has it out for me. Or my boss, they just have it out for me. Or it's the organization, It's not my fault. It's their fault. And then what do we do in addition to blaming? We try to fix things. It's like, hey, I want to be known to be happy. That's what I want. I want to feel happy. I want to be known as the adventurous, fun person, but I'm not having fun. It's not adventurous, and I'm not happy. And it's not my fault, so we blame, and then we try to fix. It's her fault. You know, if she would just do these 2 things, if he would just do these 3 things, if they would just do this, then I would finally be happy. Now, come on. Have you guys ever been on the other side of a fixer? Is that not exhausting? Somebody constantly trying to fix you? It's a big difference between a fixer and a discoverer. A discoverer, just breathes life into you. But that's what we have a tendency to do, just kind of manage our image. And you know what else we do? When there's a gap, we lie. We lie. In fact, if you've come to Northpoint for a while, you know I have 5 sons, and I love all 5 of them. They're amazing. But the truth is, they're liars. Every single one of them, they all lie. And if they're here, I'm trying to be a good dad, boys, so I love you. Just hanging with me. But they do, and they know this. And one of the areas they lie from time to time, or I've caught them, is with school. You know, I'm asking them maybe on a particular, moment, hey, how are your grades? And they're like, Dad, they're great, doing good in school. I'm like, hey, what if we check your grades tonight? How about we look them up? And they're like, there's something wrong with the computer, the grading system. And then I push the issue, and they're like, Dad, don't you trust me? I thought a good dad's trust. And I'm like, okay, now I need to look. And then I look, and I find out they're failing biology or whatever it is. And I'm like, boys. Now, I get it. My sons, they have this desire. They want to be known as I'm doing a good job. They want to make me proud as their father. I get that. But the temptation is when there's a gap between what we want to be known for and what reality is. Man, we want to manage that image. We lie. And do you know who else we lie to? Not only the people around us, but we lie to ourselves. I mean, have you ever been on the other side of somebody who continually repeats themselves? You know, it's like, hey, how's it going? They're like, I'm good, I'm super good, I'm great, I'm fantastic, I'm good. And you're going like, how many times? Like, it feels like you're trying not only to convince me of that, but you're trying to convince yourself of that, right? And we have a tendency, that's our temptation. And here's the deal. I get it. I do. But if that's where we end up, if we continue to manage our image and go like, hey, it's not my fault, I pretend a little bit, or, play the blame game, or I got to fix it so I can feel a certain way, or I'm not going to tell the whole truth, and we continue to go down that way, and we manage our image over time, our life becomes extraordinarily stagnant. Now, if you've ever looked up the definition of stagnant, it's not good. It's stuck. Stagnant is this idea that I don't move forward. I'm not stepping into who I desire to be or what I want to be known for. Stagnant by definition, in the definition, is the word stinks. Like it just stinks. And guys, when we manage our image, oftentimes that's what we feel about our relationships. That's what we feel about work. That's what we feel about life. That's what we feel about our dating relationships, friendships. We just kind of feel stagnant or stuck. Anytime I see the word stagnant, there's this image that comes to my mind. And to explain what I mean by that, I'm going to get a little random, but if you come to Northpoint for a while, I get random. So I'm just curious, how many of you guys have seen this show right here, Naked and Afraid? Who's going to admit that in church? A lot of you guys are embarrassed. You're like, can I say I've watched that show? Anyways, but so Naked and Afraid, if you haven't seen it, it's a Discovery Channel. They blur everything out, so just in case you're thinking those thoughts. And so it's a show about 2 individuals that are basically dropped off in a jungle or dropped off in this terrible climate, and they have to survive for 21 days. Well, I remember like 10 years ago when I first saw the advertisement for this show on Discovery. I was like, are you kidding me? Is this actually real? Like people will actually do this, and people actually do it. And so I remember the first episode I'm watching, and again, I'm thinking to myself, okay, this is crazy, but are they going to survive 21 days? And episode after episode, what they do is these 2 individuals, when they're dropped off, immediately what they look for is they try to find shelter, they try to find food, they try to find fire, and then they know they have to find water. Because if you're a survivalist, you know that you can survive maybe about 3 days without water. You've got to find water. And so they have to find it. So, episode after episode I'm watching. And what they would find oftentimes is a pond or some water that looked like this. Just totally stagnant. Full of fungi and bacteria and animal dung and just stinky. Just disgusting, right? Now, I don't want to get too dramatic or anything in this realm. But I think, come on, if we're honest, when we pretend, blame, fix, lie to ourselves, when we consistent state of managing our image And yes, there's a gap relationally. Yes, there's a gap in terms of who I want to be. Yes, there's a gap professionally. Yes, there's a gap academic. And we just manage and manage and manage. This is oftentimes what our life looks like, that we just feel stagnant, that it's just kind of stinky. And you may hear that and you may go, well, Buck, I mean, what do you expect? I mean, come on. Should I just walk around and just tell everybody, here's the real deal in my marriage. Here's really what's going on in my life. I mean, if I shared the real me with people all around me, people wouldn't like me. I guarantee it. And I get that pushback. I really do. But let's go thought deeper. Come on. Because we've got to think about this. This is important. If people don't know what you're really like, they don't like the real you. What they like is the image of you. What they have fallen in love is with the image that you've presented to them. But you've never allowed them to see the real you. Now, guys, again, I'm not advocating that you go around just saying to everybody, hey, look at me, here's every secret I've ever had. That is not wise. That's very foolish. But here is what I'm saying, is this. Until we embrace who and where we really are, we cannot get to where we want and need to be. And guys, again, this is a human thing. This is a universal thing. I don't think any of us want the stagnant waters in our life, in our relationships, in our relationship with our Heavenly Father. None of us want this in our life. What we desire, where we want to be, where we need to be, is in the refreshing waters of life. That if you ever watch, again, Naked and Afraid, from time to time, they will find these waterfalls where it naturally filters the water. And you can see this desperation that they're so thirsty and they so want this refreshing. And when they take a drink of these refreshing waters, you can see them get re-energized. You can see them get refocused. You can see them get renewed and refreshed. And isn't that what we want in life? Isn't that what you want in your marriage, in your dating relationships, in your relationship with your son, your daughter, in your work relationships? We all long for that. So the natural question is, what leads us from the stagnant waters of life to the refreshing waters of life? And according to all the research, this is consistent across the board with neuroscientists, with psychologists, with pretty much anybody you pick. There's one thing that continually is the bridge that leads us from the stagnant waters to the refreshing waters, and it's one word. It's relationships. Relationships. In fact, you and I are designed to be in intentional relationships. Yeah, I love from what God says in the very beginning. In the very beginning, the letter of Genesis, where it's all about design. This is like what you're designed to be, who you're designed. What did God do? You know, he knit you together in your mother's womb. He knows every hair on your head. He is for you. He loves you. And in the very beginning, it's like, okay, what did you do? How did you design us? Because we should tap into that, because it can unlock so many different things in our lives. In the very beginning, this is what God says. He says, you know, then the Lord God said, it is not good for man to be alone. In other words, it's not good for you to be alone. I didn't design you to be a lone ranger. I didn't design you, even though I know that you experienced hurt in that first marriage, second marriage. I know you experienced hurt with men or with women, whatever it may be, to withdraw and to say, I don't need them anymore. I can't trust them anymore. No, I didn't design you that way. In fact, if you go there, which I get, but if you go there, that's the stagnant waters of life. If you withdraw and say, I don't need anybody anymore, they just hurt, or I'm fine by myself, you are stepping towards stagnant waters of life. And again, all the research points to this. It's fascinating. And one of the things I love is that the more science that we discover, the more things that we, studies and research, again, with neuroscientists, psychologists, it just puts an exclamation point to the very words of God. That this is what we know today. In 2023, we know that being alone is worse than smoking 15 cigarettes a day. That being alone is far worse than obesity. It is far better to be obese than to be alone. We know that being alone, or saying, hey, I don't need anybody, I'm a lone ranger, I'm fine, I'm not going to get involved in intentional relationships, we know it can lead to things like this: increased stress, high blood pressure, mental health problems, depression, anxiety, low self-esteem, sleep problems, tribalism. Tribalism, the idea that, hey, I'm individual. If you tread on me, I'm going to tread on you. It's a dog-eat-dog world. I can kill you, I can cancel you, I don't really care. That's tribalism. And of course, a God who loves you, a God who's for you, what do you think he would say if this is what we're discovering science objectively is saying about being alone? Of course a loving God would say to you and to me, man, that's not good. It's not what I designed you to be. Those are the stagnant waters of life. Okay. Well, God, what does it look like for us to move forward? God, if it's not good for us to be alone, then what would you say? Well, God tells us, and God designs something for each of us. He said this, I will make a helper who is just right for him. Now, guys, I love this passage. In fact, we could spend the next several weeks just camping out, hanging out right here. There is so much to say, but what I want to focus on today, because it's so relevant for our discussion, is the word helper. The word helper. That word in the Hebrew is the word aser. Aser in the Hebrew, it's a very unique word. The word in the Hebrew, it literally means one who helps, partners, reflects, exposes, and encourages. Now, to be true to the context of the passage, this is between a man and a woman, a husband and a wife. This is what God's talking about. Now, this is really important to hear. This is not the main point of today, but it will be a universal principle for us to explore. But in the immediate context, here's what it's saying. It's saying that a woman is designed to be an eser in a marriage relationship. In other words, one who reflects, one who exposes, one who helps, one who encourages. And that's really important because women have this incredible ability. This is why you hear me say all the time, if you come to Northpoint, I'm like, women have this, this bottomless well of wisdom, so much insight into life, where a woman can say, hey, let me tell you about that decision with our kids, where that's going to lead. Hey, let me tell you financially, if we make this financial decision, here's kind of the cascading effect of that. Hey, if we make this decision to move here, we make that job or career decision, hey, let me just kind of reflect and expose some of these things. And they show you the dominoes. They show you what's around the corner. They have this incredible wisdom. Our job as a husband is to discover that. But far too often, we don't do that as husbands. As husbands, we're like, quit nagging. Quit nagging, As husbands, we're like, just let me do what I want to. I just want to have fun. Can I just have fun? Can I just hang out with the guys? Can't we just grab a beer and just chill? I mean, come on. Boy, you are missing out on one of the most incredible God-designed gifts that he has given you in an eser relationship with your wife. Now, what's important to know, the word eser isn't a less than term. In fact, you need to know this. The word eser is one of the names of God all throughout the scriptures. That you see over and over the name of God, eser. That's what he is to you, to me, to every single one of our lives, that we need an eser in our lives. And then you see it throughout the scriptures, especially in the Old Testament, that the Israelites would name their children eser, like that was their name, because they knew the community. They knew men and women, the whole community needed these eser relationships in their life. That we all universally applicable to our lives, that we need these intentional relationships, these eser relationships, because these relationships in every single one of our lives, they expose what, you may say? Expose what's inside of you. You need to know what's going on in here, because there are so many things about your life. There's so many things about your personality. There's so many things about your disposition. There's so many things about your words. There's so many things about your body language that you just don't know, that you can't see in the mirror, that you may be convinced that this is an attribute, this is a strength, but the reality is it is no strength at all. In fact, it's keeping your relationship stagnant. It's keeping your life in those dirty waters. And an eser relationship is somebody who comes on the other side of you and says, can I have that conversation? Can we have that you build trust with? Can I expose that? Can I expose the shadowy side? Because every single one of us have a shadow side. We have wonderful things God's created us with, but they also cast a shadow in our lives. So what's a shadowy side? Well, I love what Pete Scazzaro, he's a former pastor, great author, great thinker. I love what he says. He says the shadow side is the accumulation of untamed, less than pure motives and thoughts that, while largely unconscious, strongly influence and shape our behaviors. It's the damaged but also hidden version of who we are. Do you know you have a hidden version? See, we look in the mirror and we're like, I'm fine, I'm good. Hey, it's her fault, his fault, their fault, my boss is, No, there's a hidden version of, do you know that? Do you know you have a shadow side? And it has really big implications on your life. In fact, I love what Parker Palmer, he's a researcher, author. Here's what Parker says. He says, a leader is a person who has an unusual degree of power to project onto other people their shadow or their light. We can either be illuminating as heaven or shadowy as hell. That's not only true for leaders, that's true for all of us. That you have wonderful qualities about you, wonderful attributes about you. God designed things that illuminate heaven in your relationships, in your workplace, wherever you go, in your neighborhood, in the gym. But you also have a shadowy side that can bring the shadowy versions of hell. And guys, I know this is true for you and true for me. This is one of the reasons why here at Northpoint on our staff culture, in every one of our one-on-ones, in my one-on-ones that we have every week, we have a time we call open time. And this is a time we just simply ask the question, what's it like on the other side of me? Hey, it's been, X amount of time, maybe 7 days since we last met. I'm just curious, what's it like on the other side of me? Every week I ask this question. I'm like, hey, what are the things that I don't see that you see? Hey, in our staff meeting this week, hey, on Sunday morning or on stage or when I was walking around, did I do anything, say anything that just maybe I'm not aware of? Am I coming across in our one-on-ones? Am I empowering you? Do you feel disempowered in any way? Is there any trust gaps that is there any shadow that you need to reflect to me? Every single week, we ask this question, I ask this question. This week, somebody said to me, a friend of mine, I was talking to her and I said open time and the whole thing. She said, well, Buck, here, can I reflect something? I'm like, go for it. And so she said, in these meetings, certain meetings, she said, you will think out loud. Like you process out loud and it's random. And sometimes it creates a lot of sideways energy. And this week when you did that thing, it just created a lot of sideways energy on the team. And it wasn't that effective. And I just want to reflect that to you. A couple months ago, I was meeting with a buddy of mine and he's sitting down and he said, Buck, can I kind of reflect something to you? And I said, go for it. And he said, there's this certain phrase you use, and I get it, you're human, but you seem to be using it more and more frequent, and it's just not that effective. It's probably not leading you to where you want to be, and you keep saying, what the hell? I mean, you just say, what the hell, what the hell? And he's like, can I just reflect that to you? And then, a short time ago, Jill and I had a gap in our relationship, and so we were talking through it, just, what's going on. I asked her the question. I said, babe, what's it like on the other side of me? Honestly, I feel like I'm a little bit stuck. You're a little bit stuck. What do you feel like I'm doing here? What do you feel like I'm not seeing? And she said, babe, I feel like you're being harsh. I feel like you're being hard. And I feel like you're being short. And I wrote those 3 things down. And guys, let me just tell you. When people reflect those things to me, time and time again, I'm a human being. There's something that is inside of me that wants to just rise on up, and I want to say to them, what the hell, What's going on? Let me think the way I want to think, speak what I want to say, Come on, I'm a human being. And babe, you think I'm hard and harsh and short? Well, I'll tell you 4 or 5 things you are. That's inside of me. I want to do that. But here's what I've learned, and I'm just telling you, and I don't get this right every time, but it is one of the greatest gifts you will give yourself, regardless if you're a God follower, Jesus follower or not, is I literally count for 21 seconds. When somebody's giving me that feedback, I count. I'm like, 1, 2, and I try to engage. But then I think of the words of Jesus' brother. Great words. He says, quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to become angry. And guys, when I do that for 21 seconds, it's one of the greatest gifts I've been given in my life for my leadership, for my personal satisfaction, for my relationships, because I've been given the gift of what it's my shadow. It's been exposed. And it doesn't guarantee it won't get on anybody, but my goodness, what an incredible gift. And God knew that. And he designed Esser relationships for you and for me. This is why one of the wisest men who ever lived, his name's Solomon, the 3rd king of Israel. He says these words, as iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another. You are designed to have these intentional relationships that continue to reflect and expose what it's like on the other side of you. And that's an intentional relationship. It does expose. But you know what else it does? It encourages. Encourages. Here's the thing I want you to think about when it comes to encouragement. That your greatest wounds, your greatest trauma, your greatest hurt in life, I guarantee have come from relationships. Relationships. Maybe family of origin, maybe that first or second marriage, maybe that trusted person or that trusted group of people, maybe that trusted man or that trusted woman. Man, the wounds have come from relationships. But equally so, your greatest healing in life has also come from relationships. that counselor, that group of people, that pastor, that small group leader. And here's our tendency, is that when we experience the hurt and the trauma because of those relationships, again, maybe it's a mom, a dad, maybe it's that man, that woman, that group of people, maybe first or second marriage, our tendency, our temptation is to withdraw, to say, well, all men are that way, and I'm disengaging. I'm not going to get hurt again. I'm not going to get married. It's just an institution. It's ridiculous. And we withdraw and withdraw and withdraw. If you stay withdrawn, every psychologist, every counselor will tell you, you will never get healed. You won't. Because you fix what's going on, you address what's going on in here through relationships. And this is where the greatest encouragement comes from. It's to walk into that relationship, to that room, and with that someone or someones, and for the first time in your life, you're seen, you're heard, you're valued, you're listened to. And you're like, this feels so good. It's those relationships, that someone or someone's in your life who, when your son or daughter was born, they were there, but they were there in extra. They sent you that extra text. They brought that extra meal. They just got you. They understood exactly what you needed. It's that group of people or that couple that called you up and said, hey, let's go play pickleball. And you're like, what? We don't have time for that. We don't want to play pickleball. They're like, come on, we're picking you up. They pick you up. You go play pickleball. You've never played pickleball. You're exhausted because of the physical activity, but that's good for you. And at the end of pickleball, you look at them and you're like, you know exactly where we're at in our marriage. You know exactly where we're at in our relationship. You totally get us. And I'm so encouraged by people like you. It's that someone or someones who normalize things in your life. You know, in that dating relationship, that marriage relationship, that we get all worked up and we think it's a level 10, but honestly, it's a level 2. That's really what it is. But we think it's a level 10 and we're getting all worked up and trying to make these dramatic decisions, and I'm about to. And then they're like, can we just have that conversation? I remember for me, I have someones in my life, and I'm so grateful in parenting, because I have a tendency to look at my sons like they're 45 years old and put that expectation on them. And one of the most encouraging conversations I have on a consistent basis is to go, Buck, did you realize your son was 5? And I'm like, oh yeah, that's good. Buck, did you realize your son is 14? That's helpful. That's what 14-year-olds do. Now, it doesn't excuse it. It's just normalizing things in your life. It's that someone or someones. God said, it is not good for you to be alone, for me to be alone. You're not designed that way. You're designed to do the thing that maybe everything in you wants to resist. But it's the greatest thing you could do. It's to be in those intentional SR relationships. Because what God knows, what psychologists knows, what science knows, what neuroscience knows, what it all knows, it points to the fact that intentional relationships close the gap between where you are and where you want to be. You want to experience those refreshing waters. The bridge to that is those SR relationships. Because here's what happens. That intentional relationships, they expose your shadow. We all have one. You got to know what it is consistently. And they encourage your life towards those refreshing waters that you long for, that I long for, that God has invited you into. And guys, I can tell you in my personal life, time and time again, when it's stagnant, when Jill and I are stuck, when I'm stuck in parenting, when I feel like I'll lose hope, when I'm so frustrated as a leader, I can look back and I can pinpoint it to the intentionality of my relationships and the lack thereof. And I can also say when things are thriving, when I'm moving forward, when things are good, when there is that deep satisfaction in my soul, and Jill and I are moving, and my boys and I are moving, and Northpoint's moving, I can pinpoint it to those intentional relationships. Yes, uncomfortable at times, but one of the greatest gifts you could give yourself. And there's so many stories I could share with you, but today, I just want to share one. It's a story of a man named Truman. And in his story, Truman talks about kind of where he was, if you will, in this stagnant place. And he began to cross this bridge, and he tells us what that is and experience something different in his life. Take a look at Truman's story.
I went to school at Texas A&M University for my bachelor's, and I learned pretty early on that I had a different type of drinking pattern compared to my friends. It wasn't long before I suffered some severe consequences for that. I went in and out of the rooms of recovery for about 8 years, and when I was 28, I finally hit bottom. My sobriety date is May 21st of 2006. I have 17 years sobriety. However, this journey I'm on in recovery will be a lifetime journey. It was easy for me to find a higher power, but not necessarily something that I defined as Jesus. It was just something greater than myself. A few months into going to Northpoint, we did join a group called Marriage Matters. It was a very powerful group. However, when that group was done, I kind of coasted. My wife and children would volunteer for guest services and they would help out. I would sleep in. I would sneak in, sit in the back row, and sneak out. Even though I'm practicing recovery day in and day out, there was a big gap in my heart. There was a hole there. I knew there was something there that I was curious about, that I wanted to investigate more, but I did not know how to begin. A couple of years ago, one of the leaders from Marriage Matters, Craig Ferguson, just came up to me and said, "Hey, I would like you to join what's called LDG, which is a leadership development group." I thought it would be great another thing to help make my wife happy. I'll plunge through it and we'll see what happens from there. I had no idea what to expect, but as each month went forward, I felt something change inside of me. The goal of LDG is to be known by a few, be rooted in Jesus. And that is something specifically towards Jesus that I was extremely curious about. About 3 months into that group, we had a retreat. And in that retreat, you do tell your story. And I've told my story in recovery rooms many times, but I left out that whole with my higher power, how it was kind of vague. I was surprised on some of the things I was sharing and getting honest, especially with my thoughts towards church and religion. And they listened with such kindness. I did not know how to move forward. And the leaders and the other gentlemen in that group said, all Jesus wants is for you to make a start. Just begin. Within a few months of that, I learned a little bit more about the type of relationship that I want with my higher power, which was Jesus Christ, who I have accepted in my heart as my Lord and Savior. Recovery saved my life, but this type of group helped my soul. It was a feeling of accountability, showing up for them and having them do the same thing for me. In recovery, I speak with total strangers all the time, and I get vulnerable for an hour and then I move on. But this was the same group of 12 men, month in and month out. And it really gave me a chance to breathe, know that my Heavenly Father, that Jesus Christ loves me. I am a firm believer if you're not moving forward, you're moving backward. And I know what it is to purposely think about, just go to church, just sit in the back row, just hear the message and leave. And I know what that got me. It didn't give me a lot. And I know what it is to be vulnerable, to put myself out there, finally make a start. I just feel like I've scratched the surface with my relationship with Jesus. And I know these types of groups will help bring me closer and closer to his teachings, to how he wants me to live my life, to be the father I've always wanted to be the husband that I've always wanted to be, and what my family deserves. And there's a calm, there's a strength in that, knowing that I can turn to that at any time. And that was what was missing. And that just seemed to fill the hole in me that was there. It really gave me a sense of that I was not alone.
I love Truman's story. I love his willingness to be brave and authentic and share it with each and every one of you. And I also love what he said. He said, if you're not moving forward, then you're moving back. And he feels and can speak from his experience, the thing that has allowed him to take steps, intentional steps away from the stagnant ponds of life into the refreshing ponds of life are those intentional eser relationships that we can all choose to step into. Guys, I love what Dr. Henry Cloud says. He's a New York Times best-selling author. He's a psychologist, and he says these words. He says it's simple. The relationships in your life are the most important determinant of how well you do in life. Focus on choosing your relationships wisely and investing in those who will return the favor. I love this. You won't regret it. You won't regret it. So guys, in our last 5 minutes, I want to give you an opportunity to do something you will not regret. It's something that God designed you to do. And it's to be in those eser relationships, those intentional relationships. So I'm going to ask you, every single one of us, those in the foyer, again, in the chairs, on the benches, wherever you're at, watching, listening online, I want you to get out your phone. And I want you to scan the QR code that's going to be on the screen or the QR code that's on the back of your seats, or you can text to 97,000 NP groups. And the reason why I'm asking you to do that is because it will allow you to take a step into those intentional relationships. So please get out your phones, scan the QR code, text 97,000 NP groups to 97,000. A form will pop back, click on that, and I will walk you through some intentional steps in just a second. Give you about 20 seconds to do that. There you go. It's just making you move, isn't it? All right. So you guys text it, scan it. You got it pulled up on your phone. It should look like this. You should have received a link, and the first little screen that pops up in this form is this. This is just providing your contact information. So guys, hear me clear that this is not to spam you, to put you on all the lists. No, this is simply to go, hey, we want to follow up with you to be able to provide you some opportunities to take those steps in intentional relationships, just like Truman. So that just provides your contact information. Then you scroll down, and as you scroll down, the next screen you'll see is this, your preferred method of communication, text, email, or call, and then the different groups. We've got so many different communities that you can take a step into. We've got, couples groups, men's groups like Truman talked about, women's groups, young adults groups, Starting Point. If you're not familiar with what Starting Point is a small group, and it's a short-term group, and Starting Point is the perfect place. If you've got, thoughts in your mind that you're going, hey, Buck, I hear you talk about Jesus inviting us into life and life into the full. I want to experience that. What is that all about? Because I got a lot of questions maybe about the Bible, about other religions, about science, about the church, about my past church experience, whatever it may be. One of the safest environments, one of the safest communities for you to have honest discussions about faith and discover how to move it from your head to your heart is called Starting Point. And Starting Point is a great, great next step, not only to get your questions answered, but to engage in those intentional relationships. And then we have other groups, and unsure if you've got ideas, here's the kind of group I want to be part of, make sure to fill that out. And guys, when you click on other, there's all kinds of groups here again. We've got young married groups. We've got divorce care groups. We've got groups for parents whose sons and daughters are part of the LGBTQ plus community. And you're going, what does love require of me? What does wisdom require of me? There's lots of questions. We just want to create a safe environment to discover those intentional relationships, to know you're not alone. We also have multicultural groups. We've got 2 of those. If you're an adult and you would say, hey, I'm interested to connect with people that maybe have similar backgrounds to me, regardless of the country you're from, the language you speak at home, or your family of origin, there's a great group for you in our multicultural groups. And then we've got women of Latin heritage group. Again, regardless of your background, just to walk in, to be seen, to be heard, and to have great discussions about life and about faith and find those intentional relationships. Those are great, great groups. So go ahead and click there, and then you scroll down, and you'll see this next page is fairly self-explanatory. This is my first time, checking out Northpoint groups, or maybe you're interested in leading a group or just have some general questions. We would love to know. Here's the deal. Once you hit submit, you will get a form back, and then you will be opened up to all the different opportunities to step into intentional communities, those intentional relationships. And this week, we will follow up with you to answer any questions you have, maybe about the groups or just, dynamics. Again, this doesn't commit you to anything. It's just your willingness to say, you know what? God did design me for something far greater than perhaps you're experiencing. And the bridge to those refreshing waters is those intentional relationships. We as a church, we just want to help and come alongside. If you have further questions today and you're here in person in the foyer at the Next Steps table, we've got great leaders who will answer every question you have. Go ahead, take a step. It's worth it. Let me pray for us. Father, thank you so much for today and just for your goodness and grace. Thank you that you love us, that you designed us in such a way that I think we all know in the depths of who we are as human beings, that we're designed to be connected for a relationship. Father, thank you that you've put these ESSER relationships in our life. They're all around us. But it does require a level of intentionality, a level of authenticity, a level of bravery to make that consistent step and experience something perhaps far greater than we've ever experienced. God, I trust you with that. Give us the courage to take that step. We love you in Jesus' name. Amen. Guys, thanks for being here. I'll see you next week.